It is really funny because you go out there and literally sometimes the contractors or someone in the staff there, someone in the crew will expect you to know everything completely out of your field, completely out of your expertise. But well, you're the engineer, so you should know. I suppose you've got to have a little bit of thick skin about yourself. You've got to know what you know, and more importantly, know what you don't know. As soon as you start pretending you know something that you don't, you get found out. So, I definitely recommend not going into that territory.
Chris Borg, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me. Been a little while since we've had a chat, but it's good to reconnect, really.
It is, it's funny. I reflect that there's people throughout your life and your career that you meet you interact with over many years. And then it's funny how sometimes people circle back in your life. Has that ever happened to you? I mean, obviously, other than me.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a big thing that I'm about. Like I'm not a burning bridge type of guy. I love sort of connecting with people. I'm a real people person, and if there's someone I know that I think could be helpful to someone I've just met, I'll say, oh look, I think I'd love to connect you to this person, and that's just something that's been a bit of a natural thing for me. I just sort of like and enjoy connecting people, and if I can help people out that way, and it's turned out to be a real value add, I suppose, because the bigger your network is, the more people you know. It's just sort of the sums just start working in your favor, and you want to be that person that people call and say, "Hey, Chris, can you help me?" And I know if you can't, you'll know someone who can. And I really enjoy that. I really get a lot of satisfaction out of being that person to people in the industry.
Yeah, it's great. Being able to connect people, connect the dots, get the solutions or the answers to problems, even if you don't have them yourself. Connecting people is a great way to, allow your network to grow as well. Because, I always think if you be the go-to, and if you don't have the answer, people ring you anyway because they know that you probably know someone that does. So,
Yeah, that's it. And they call and say, what do you know about this? Um, what do you know about this project or this site? And back to your question, which I somehow avoided. When I first met you, I was at council. We haven't had much to do with each other besides me sort of watching you on LinkedIn for a bit, and getting some inspiration there. But a lot of developers, contractors, consultants, and my colleagues at council, I'm really well connected to them still. I've moved away from Metro Sydney, but I do plenty of work still down there. And yeah, it's nothing for me to connect someone who's even up here north of the border or in the Northern Rivers to someone down in Western Sydney or Northwest Sydney where I used to live and play. Um, and from that, someone's gaining some experience or value, or it might turn into a job for me, or it might not turn into a job for me. But I'm still doing that all the time. I'm still really good mates with the guys that I worked with at council, and they've moved on and done other things, and we've done work together like that as well. So yeah, that's how I like to operate, really. Just yeah, working on that network, not with any sort of agenda or anything, just being able to make connections that are real and be friendly with people, and then do good work with them. Because you want to, as you'll know, you want to work with people that you trust, you enjoy working with. So if I've already got that trust and relationship with them, it's great to do a project with them as well.
yeah, no, I love that. And I sort of wanted to dive into that because from what I understand is you know you've gone from, and I understand you're maybe in the Navy at some point in time, then you're at council, in the public sector, and now you're in the private sector. How have you been able to navigate those changes throughout your career, like from one to one to one? Like maybe step us through, like, from the earlier days to
Yeah,
maybe council and then the pivot to the private sector.
yeah. So I actually started in private. I did a structural engineering degree, and I went into structural design. Uh, so I finished uni, and I actually managed to finish uni right in the GFC where everyone was letting people go. So I'd done my third year placement with a company that offered me a job, my fourth year placement as well, sorry, that offered me a job, and I was set to work there. There's a little side story to that, or maybe we'll get to later. Um, and I took that job, and before I then started full time, I got let go. The GFC had hit. Um, so then I was in the job hunt between, November, having previously signed a contract to start in January full time. So um, I've really, had in my head that I was starting full time in January of whatever year it was, 2009. And yeah, so then I was on the job hunt and I was looking everywhere. It wasn't just Sydney anymore. And I ended up in Newcastle doing structural design for Lindsay Dine, and I really enjoyed that. Had a really great time in Newcastle. I stuck around with them for about 4.5 years, and in that time, I did some secondment work. So there was some fly in, fly out work, and some drive in, drive out work on some coal mines. Took a real liking to that, and then when I ended up back working in Sydney with them, I I said, oh, I thought, oh, I really want to do site work. And that's when, and I think you've seen the stuff in the Navy, it was actually at the Navy base, but it was for
Cool.
a ship repair company.
Okay.
So I then sort of did a pivot there, and I went to site work, but it was in Sydney on the Navy base. And I sort of threw myself in the deep end there. I took a job. It was ship repairs, so boilermakers, welders, uh, that sort of thing. And I was pretty much sort of running a crew of blokes, which sort of turned into some other things with the company owner there. And it wasn't really for me. I thought, oh look, I'd studied, I'd done my 4 years at uni, and 5 years after that of structural and some civil design, and then I was not really enjoying what I was doing at the Navy base.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I then started looking around and I found a job at the local council, which was Hill Shire, and it was
Yeah.
only, a couple of k's from home. It was in a subdivisions team, which I didn't really have all that much experience with, but I had a crack, and I landed that job. And yeah, that was sort of when I first started cutting my teeth on development, and the process and subdivisions. That was back in maybe 2013, I think I took that job. And
Wow.
from there, yeah, I spent nearly 5 years at council, and then decided to move north. So I was then offered a job with Barker Ryan Stewart, who I work for now. And they came to me and said, "Oh, look, we want to move north. We heard you're moving north. Why don't you join us and we can both do it together?" So, I was really lucky because I was sort of trying, staying, scratching my head at night, thinking, how do I do this? I'm moving away. I don't have a job. I need a job to buy a house. So the logistics of it were quite difficult. But once I had the job thing sorted, it all sort of fell into place nicely. And here I am, 7 and a bit years later at Barker Ryan Stewart. They've given me a lot of rope to do things, and yeah, I've loved it. It's been really great. It's been lots of opportunities and lots of projects.
How do you find yourself in a position where you're looking to move into state and an engineering consultancy taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, we've got a similar thing that we want to do. Why don't you move and work with us?"
Yeah, well, I think it probably comes back to what we were starting with before, that the interactions I have with people. You like to be professional. You like to, um, without sort of going out there to set a reputation. I suppose your reputation is there with you. So the only dealings I had with Barker Ryan Stewart before is that I was giving one of the directors a bit of heat. When I was from council side, because there was some complaints and stuff and whatnot, and I sort of spoke through them with Gary Ryan, one of the directors, and he was pleasant and very good as always, very professional, and I guess my approach to that situation left a mark with them. I then had a colleague, who you'll probably remember, Daniel Rastusha, moved from council to Barker Ryan Stewart, and then I suppose the whispers of my move just kind of got out there, and then yeah, I ended up with that conversation, and it just, yeah, the rest is history, I think they say so.
So really you gave someone a grilling and then you got the opportunity. Or maybe not a grilling, but you had a discussion that, set the scene, and then that was something that allowed, a further conversation to happen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not a grilling. Probably just some tough questions on a site with a resident there who was unhappy about some things.
Yeah,
And that interaction with Gary led to yeah, me working for Gary, with Gary, and Gary's now, one of a couple of, really strong mentors I have now as well. So that relationship's been really good.
that's amazing. So, and I'm sure that, your take on networking and how that's given you the ability to leverage, not just your own skills and value that you bring, but others. But and I presume you never lived in Queensland before, or, north of the border, whatever you say, but how did you just go, I'm moving and I'm going to do this and I'm just going to start, working in another state, as an engineer, as a manager, as a leader, as an engineering leader? How do you just go, I'm moving, and then just start from scratch?
Yeah, well, there's no real um book on how to do it or anything. So it was once my wife and I, so we just got married, and so it was out 2016. We had a few friends do the move or talk about doing the move, and we sort of started thinking about it ourselves, and just sort of it got a bit of momentum as it does, and we had no kids, so we thought, oh, that's probably, if we're going to do it, it's probably a good time to do it. Um, and then yeah, once the job stuff sort of came in, it was just a matter of, well, I was given an opportunity, and uh, I'm the type of person that I sort of don't really do things in halves either. So, I came here and I just got on the phones and who do I know? Who do I need to know? What jobs are around? What can I do? And I suppose the selling point for me is, the certification. There's no certifiers up here. It's new to the developers. It's new to the consultants. It's new to the councils. So
Mm,
I suppose, for lack of a better word, I probably went on a bit of um, a road show. That's not really the right word at all, but just explaining that system to people and how it can work and how it might benefit their projects. Um, and yeah, it took some time, and Barker Ryan Stewart were really supportive and said, look, it will take some time. The wheels will turn slowly, but once they start turning, it'll really gather some momentum. And that's really what's happened, after, it took a couple of years, but the surveyors, the engineers around the place, the Northern Rivers, because I am north of the border, but I do a lot of my work in the Northern Rivers. Um, the Northern Rivers has a much smaller pool of consultants than, say, Sydney. So you get to know them pretty quickly, and then they've got a subdivision job or a strata job, and then you just all of a sudden they just keep rolling in. So
mm,
yeah, it really was about you know building that network, uh, starting starting from the ground zero, and working my way up. And then along the way, through the certification work, that the team, the Barker Ryan Stewart certification team, has just sort of grown and grown. Um, and as I've gathered experience, I've been lucky enough to sort of play a bit of a leadership role with that team. So yeah, it
mm,
just I suppose it just kind of happens. But I quite enjoy that side of it as well. I sort of realized probably a couple of years ago that not everyone has been lucky enough to have that experience I've had, where the council experience to the private, how transferable it is,
mm,
and just by sitting and absorbing when I was at council, and taking an interest in it, I suppose, um, how much I how much I knew. Um,
mm.
so, because I was in the subdivisions team, which you'll probably remember had some really good engineers and some really good planners as well.
Yeah.
Um, without saying I'm a planner or anything, but I can talk the talk a little bit there as well, and I can hold my own in those sort of conversations. So, um, just by absorbing that information, it's just come in handy, particularly when you're talking about a process and legislation as a whole.
Indeed. So, I mean, I often say that, it takes 300 coffees to build a business. How many phone calls, were you doing a day? Like, tell me about some of those formative times? You know, you probably had a few no's. It was, and I know what it's like. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a slog. Um, but yeah, I suppose I really had no really didn't have a strong methodology or anything to it, but just a matter of you just my eyes are always out. LinkedIn wasn't as strong, 5, 6 years ago as it is now, so you didn't get that exposure to projects and whatnot. But
Hmm.
however I could find out about projects, I would. Um, so DA trackers, major project websites,
Yeah.
um, talking to my contacts in Sydney still. Who do they know up here? Who should I be talking to? And then, good old fashioned between admin and myself, let's get a list of all the surveyors, let's get a list of all the engineers, let's get a list of all the planners and just work my way through them,
Yeah.
you know. And then once you've spoke to them once, and then you see a project of theirs on a DA tracker, you talk to them again, and then I might email them the next month, or I saw you're on this project. Um, and eventually you kind of wear them down and they call you up one time. So, but
Was
yeah, I'm quite tenacious like that, I suppose. Like I've uh, sometimes you put your, the ego to the side and you just get on the phone.
Yeah, indeed. And was there like a moment where you it just started happening? Was there just a moment where you just sort of went, "Oh, hold on, like we've got a few projects," and then did it avalanche? Was there a snowball? Was the effect or did it just sort of trickle and trickle and trickle? Because I'm quite interested in that because, starting from scratch, what you talked about, ringing, following up, I mean, I think there's a general, I guess, a feeling or people understand in the industry, okay, sometimes you got to do the grind, but a lot of people are struggling at that point. They're in this state where it is a grind. It is tough. It's tough out there. Like I hear a lot of people, it's tough out there. Sounds like you got through that, but then to give some of those people maybe some hope or to say, yeah, sure, it's greener on the other side, or the horizon, or whatever you want to do, and whatever cliche, but how did it get to the point where you just sort of went, like all that hard work has now paid off and we're getting the results that we need?
Yeah, look, I'm again, it's probably a bit of a personality thing for me that not really a rest on my laurels type. So, um, even if the pipeline is strong, I'm always going to be doing that ground roots type stuff because you want that pipeline to, remain strong. You definitely want to have more work than you can handle than um, less to do. So, and look, it's ebbed and flowed as well. There's been a couple of moments, I suppose. Probably my first big certification job in Northern Rivers, which was a couple of stages for some intrapack developments in Ballina Council, so Aureus and Banyan Hill. I got a small opportunity to do some third-party review for some subdivision certificate documentation, and I said, look, and I sort of spoke to him. I said, look, I understand you've had problems with getting it through council. Why don't you let me run my eye over it first, and I'll tell you what I believe they'll pick you up on. And from there, I sort of showed that, I had a pretty good understanding of the process and whatnot, and then was given opportunities to do certification work those projects for that developer. And I still work for that developer in a couple of different forms. But then those projects came and went. So then it was back to the trickling of work. And then probably the biggest moment was in 2023, the back end, when I got a phone call that someone had just heard about me and Barker Ryan Stewart doing certification work and wanted to engage us to be a principal certifier. And that's the Kings Forest project. That's 4,500 lots. It's probably 15 to 20 years worth of work.
Yeah.
Um, and it was one that I knew about, and they knew about me and they called me. So that's always a really nice feeling that, you sort of not that you get hunted down, but someone knows and calls you rather than, there's a very nice feeling calling someone and getting a job, but just as nice getting called to do one. Um, but in between the successes, and there's been some other good sized projects as well. Um, we're continually, the certification team, we're continually reaching out to councils and say, hey, look, we know you're under-resourced.
Yeah.
Um, your development engineers, we actually have a group of people that have development engineering background. Can we help you out? And it's fantastic. We do development engineering contract work for a number of councils through New South Wales. Some councils will call us up when one of their staff's going on leave. Others we have standing arrangements with, and it just kind of again ebbs and flows between probably doing maybe four councils development engineering work and six or seven councils development engineering work. It's just a great way again to build a relationship with those councils. They get an understanding of how you work, and almost all of them have got to a point where when we started with them, we sort of say, look, this is what we can do and how we can do it. They'll say, oh, can you rewrite our specs, or can you have a look at our consent conditions? And it just builds from there. So, getting an opportunity, taking that opportunity with both hands, and that's the key for
Yeah.
us.
Oh, um, yeah, it seems very much, there is that reputation piece, there is that networking piece, to have someone turn around and look, hunt you down to do a job, of that scale, that in itself, speaks so many words about, that reputation that you've built, but not just that, the network, because someone in your network and the network of a connection has turned around and said, this guy's great, go to him, excellent. And that in itself is the effort that you put in. And then, obviously you've bared the fruit as well. So yeah, well done.
No, thank you.
It is it is hard, it's not easy. And I think a lot of people want just to get to that point. They just want to go from zero to there. So it's good because it gives an appreciation that, that hard work, will pay off, but it's not just an overnight flick the switch.
Absolutely. And there'd be plenty of people that are doing just as hard work and harder work that don't get those opportunities as well. So when they come, you know, like I said, I suppose you've really got to take them with both hands and show them what you've got, I suppose, um, and that's where the value comes out, and hopefully it leads to more and more.
Other than that, has there been some other defining moment in your career that you reflect on that you could say, like, wow, that's something that happened that's shaped where I am today?
Oh, geez. Well, the secondment work I did. So when I was at Lindsay Dynans, so I was doing structural design, and the directors at Lindsay Dynans had some really good relationships with contractors that worked out in the mines.
Mhm.
Heavy industry stuff. So erecting coal processing plants. It is some which is some pretty serious structural stuff. Conveyor belts, hoppers, those sorts of things, bins, transfer chutes. Um, and there'd been a couple of people before me that had had an opportunity to do some secondment work with those contractors. And
Yeah.
I think I was probably 3 years, 3 years into my structural career, and maybe even less. And they said, "Oh, look, there's an opportunity. Do you want to go out there?" And I was like, "Oh, geez, like I thought I'd done a pretty big step in moving from Sydney to Newcastle right at the finished uni, and then I was back in Sydney, and sort of thought about it, and I was like, oh, geez. I called up a few people that I'd worked with at Lindsay Dine and said, oh, you did this. What do you reckon? And they're like, best opportunity of my life. Absolutely go for it. So I was like, oh, all right. And then I relatively new partner at the time, which is my wife now, so it panned out all right. Not to give too much away, but um, yeah, I said, oh, I think I'm going to do it. Like it was only supposed to be 3 months or something, not even. And so I was gonna fly in and out of central Queensland, and yeah, I did it. and I had the best time. It was so much fun, and I learned so much. And you know, you I was only talking about it today. Like you go on site and you're the engineer, so you're both ends of the scales. The contractors expect you to know everything, but they also expect you to know nothing. That's not,
Yeah.
you're at the desk. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to build stuff or anything like that, which is fine. And 15, nearly 20 years experience, and everyone still thinks that when you're the engineer stepping onto a site, but that's fine. But my time on site, um, gave me some really good insights into when I was doing the structural design that, you know, you put that bolt there, you can't actually do it up. And avoiding those sorts of mistakes or, those sorts of issues, it just pays dividends because, you can pick up someone's design before your crew are about to build it and have a look and go, oh, they're going to struggle there, they're going to struggle there. Go talk to them and say, hey, look, I'm going to see if we can change this to that. And they go, oh, yeah, good idea. I go, well, they don't say that very often, so they're little wins. So yeah, definitely the site work was a big one for me. It wasn't civil stuff, but it was great because it just sort of probably just tapped into a different way of thinking for me as well and get that constructability, which is really vital for engineers.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that has an opportunity like that, just say yes.
Absolutely.
Because as you've said, I mean, that will be the thing that will accelerate you and your career. 36% of listeners won't subscribe to this podcast, and that's a real shame. If you want to help me share the stories and help others learn and grow, then please like and subscribe. I mean, a couple of things you touched on there, and one is around that stereotype of the engineer getting on site, not knowing, well, maybe not knowing everything, but supposed to know everything, but they're not supposed to know everything. How did you actually tackle that? Because I know what you're talking about, and it's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really funny because you go out there and like literally sometimes the contractors or someone in the staff there, someone in the crew will expect you to know everything completely out of your field, completely out of your expertise, but well, you're the engineer, so you should know. And yeah, it's just I suppose you've got to have a little bit of thick skin about yourself. You've got to know what you know, and more importantly, know what you don't know. And as soon as you start pretending to know something that you don't, you get found out. So, I definitely recommend not going into that territory. Just, stay in your lane, be confident with what you're knowing, and just not being afraid to say not sure about that. I think
Yeah.
I think you'll gain more respect saying that than waffling on about something you don't know and then being made a fool later on.
Yep. Honesty is the best policy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for young engineers to get on a construction site?
Oh, it really should be part of a uni course or maybe part of every graduate course. When we seek engineers come to BRS, the ones with some site experience that are in the certification space or in the design space, you can see it. Uh, you can you pick up on it in the way they talk about projects and the way they approach projects. It's absolutely crucial. And the ones that haven't done that and don't grasp that constructability side of things, that comes out pretty quickly too. So yeah, I think it really should be a part of the course,
Mm.
whether it's a year on site or something like that. I think it just really pay dividends for all ranges of engineers, whether they're getting into if they're going to be engineers on site in the end, then that's obviously great because they've got a year leg up. But if they're going into the design office, I think their future bosses would appreciate that year on site as well because they'll just know, even just when you're putting together a design. Like if you get someone who's fresh out of uni, whatnot, and tell them to design a pavement, they might design a pavement and go, oh yeah, here it is. It's for a local road and it's 500 mil thick. But someone on site that's done that year will think, oh, well, we don't normally do 500 mil thick pavements. It's usually about 300 mil. And so
Mm,
they'd probably dive into that. And that's just experience. That's just what experience is, I suppose. So you can draw on that. You might see something on paper, but you understand that that might not be right. So you'll question it.
mm. Yeah, no, no. It's a solid perspective because that level of curiosity, sometimes you can only have some of that when you've actually seen it being built, or you've had that experience, or you've watched, people connecting up to a concrete pit, whatever it is. Yeah, sometimes seeing is believing is understanding. So
Mm.
yeah. I wanted to ask you about council, uh, public sector, private sector, obviously housing delivery. It's a hot topic, particularly in New South Wales, around the housing crisis. We've had a bunch of different state-led planning policies. And I feel, given your experience in council and also now as a consultant, and I feel maybe your response might be biased in a way,
Mm.
because I know that you're a certifier, but I wanted to maybe get your take on that. And from an outsider's view, is there something you think that, maybe a couple things, or can you just give us your thoughts and takes on that? Because, yeah, I feel like that would be insightful given your breadth of experience. And if you think that there's just a couple things that you would want to point out, or, as I said, to come from an outsider's view and look in and say, oh, here's a couple of things I think, if as a collaborative group with authorities, private, public sectors, professionals, whoever it is, might be able to come together and help solve.
Yeah. So um, I'll start with the bias one that you alluded to, the certification side of things.
Yeah, yeah,
That's definitely an easy one to talk to. So,
yeah.
if you just look sheerly on numbers, so when I was at council, so I started at Hills Shire Council. I believe when I started there, they were doing something like 500 lots a year. By the time I left, they were doing north of 2,500 lots a year in terms of registering lots because we had a couple of growth areas come on and so it was all happening. So um, when you divvy that up between a team, there's only so many resources to do so many things. So it makes sense if you've got more resources, you can probably achieve more, um, just sheerly on numbers. So um, when when you get when you're able to get through the DAs and then open up that next certification point or that milestone certificate, that subdivision work certificate to get work done on the ground, and you've got the option that you can go to council, but there all are otherwise resources, which is us, the registered certifiers. It's probably somewhat surprising that there's not a huge pool of subdivision certifiers. I think, I check every so often and there's only 40 or 50 with the qualification and probably less that actually practice. Um, but, that's 40 to 50 potential extra people that could be looking at the subdivision work certificate. And, on myself, I could probably look at in terms of approvals for subdivision work certificates. Let's say 200 lots a month, so 2,400 lots a year, times that by 50 people, you're starting to add up. It's 120,000 if my maths is right. So just sheerly by numbers, there's another avenue which could help through getting through subdivision work certificates. It doesn't help the DAs, but another avenue for subdivision work certificates. So that's one thing that could assist, and that's the bias one for me, obviously, because we play in that space. The other thing that I'm really it bemuses me a little bit, is the other thing that will hold up a project probably more than anything is infrastructure or lack of infrastructure. So when I was doing the exercise, looking at a number of state significant developments from the mid-north coast to the northern regions of New South Wales, I found that there was a ton of approved DAs that just had gone stale because they
Mm.
didn't have sewer and water infrastructure, and developers were the FISOs didn't stack up because there was two, three, $5 million worth of sewer to bring from a couple of k's away. And I thought, like that just seems like a missed opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
I know that they rely on the old Section 94s, which are 7.711s or 712s now.
Yep. So, yeah.
Um, but if the state or the federal government came through and put that infrastructure in and then back charged and made 10%, so that's a healthy investment return, but the infrastructure was in the ground, that'd just kick off all the developments. The developments wouldn't be stuck behind, having to run sewer for 3 or 4 k's from the next town. And I just think, well, how is that not a win-win? It'll get developers going. The government will make their money back plus 10%, which I'm sure they'd be happy to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you spoke to most developers, they'd probably happily pay that, happily pay that to make up that money the government spent, plus a little bit of profit for the government, because it'll save them a ton. So it just baffles me that, and moving to southeast Queensland, they've got the same issues up here as well, in that we've got a priority development area, or there's an area here that's land earmarked for rezoning, or they'll rezone it, and yeah, everyone just sits around for someone else to put the sewer in, and you just go,
Mm,
it just can't be. It just has to be a better way. I just
mm,
think that if there was a program or a system that rolled that out, um, and let the government make some money off it too, like, why everyone would jump over it, I think. So
mm.
yeah, just because you do the drive from here to Sydney. I do it a couple of times a year. There's plenty of land.
Plenty of
There's
land.
plenty of land. So land supply shouldn't be the issue. But infrastructure seems to be a massive one.
I often say, if you build it, they will come. And I'm usually referring to water infrastructure.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may be roads infrastructure or otherwise. Um, but yeah, no, you definitely made some solid points. So you did talk about Queensland, you've got the issues there, New South Wales. What's different? Because a lot of people say, I get this all the time. Oh, in Victoria, like we have this, and in WA, we get our DAs in, 6 weeks, and I hear all these stories. I don't know how true or whatnot because I've never really worked in other states other than Queensland, funnily enough. So tell me what is different, and maybe what could New South Wales take from Queensland's rule book?
Oh, look, I'm definitely going back to what I said before. Definitely nowhere near across the Queensland stuff as I am the New South Wales.
Yeah,
Um, but what I do know is that when you cross the border, you can throw the EP&A Act out the window, because that one doesn't doesn't do anything north of the border,
yeah.
and then you're in the Planning Act. The Planning Act, it would seem that the legislative timeframes for councils to make decisions, or for RFIs to be replied to, are um, stronger held. I know that
So they're legislated.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
they are. So there are
Okay. Yeah, I
some.
don't know much about the Planning Act.
Yeah, so there are in New South Wales, I believe there's some script in there as well, but I think it's probably a little bit looser. But New South Wales, sorry, in Queensland, it's very much um, legislated, and there's those hard time frames. And it would seem, and I'm definitely not across the planning aspect of it in Queensland as much as New South Wales, but the planners in Queensland that do dabble, and not many will do both. They'll say that the Queensland system's easier, and it's more, I suppose, open to objective-based outcomes rather than prescriptive outcomes. So a lot of people, if you would choose between one or the other, will say that the Queensland one is easier to deal with, and the New South Wales one is a bit more convoluted. But yeah, I definitely don't know the ins and outs of it. But in terms of a vibe, there's
Oh,
definitely there's definitely the Queensland one is much preferred. And I even find you have planners that are in northern New South Wales, and most of them will have you work with one or the other, and some of them will work with Queensland and not New South Wales. Worked with a number of planners that sit 2Ks from the border, and they have no interest in the New South Wales legislation. They just say, "No, too hard. Give it to someone else. Don't want the work."
Wow, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. I think you said it all with legislative timeframes. That to me, that says everything. So maybe hopefully someone's listening in government and we can move on or at least amend our way out of it in a way because time is money.
Oh, absolutely. And what do you put into a feasibility when you're like, well, my holding costs, how long am I going to hold this thing for?
Yep.
No one knows the answer. And that's a lot of the time people will call you up and say, "Oh, well, look, how long will it take?" You say, "Oh, crystal
12
ball question.
months.
Crystal ball question."
12 months. I think 12 months is probably on average for large land subdivision in New South Wales. I
Oh,
think,
geez. I
yeah,
reckon you. I
look,
reckon you'd be caught short up here in some of the stuff. But yeah, look, 100%. Like it's tough, and you've got to kind of overestimate. But that number that people are sort of overestimating, that I'm finding, in the northern regions is more like 2 years. I'll
wow,
assume 2 years.
that's a long time.
Absolutely.
Mm,
And as you know, like a lot can change in 2 years, not just you've got political things that could change the climate. You've got, um, you know, 2 years isn't, you're probably not at tremendous risk of a LEP change, but it could happen.
could happen.
Um,
Yeah. Or an
there's,
upzoning, that'd be nice.
and yeah, an upzoning would be good. That's a win. But a change of councillors, a change of
Yeah.
council,
Change
um,
government.
a change of government, and then all of a sudden, like things like when the Biodiversity Act things come through, and koala
Yeah.
habitat becomes all of a sudden became a popular, well, a real I definitely won't say buzzword, but just become a real theme. Um, so your development could really be balancing on a pinprick, like
Mm,
which way it can go, just based on all these things that are completely out of your control, completely out of control. So you'd hate to think about all the missed opportunities where people had land ready to develop, were lucky enough to have the finances to do that, and then it gets a gate shuts because of something completely out of their control. So
mm.
it doesn't help people get in houses.
I want to ask, would you ever dabble in development, or have you?
Um, I haven't. I definitely keen to. Probably a couple of years ago, I sort of thought, oh, I know enough that I should be making me some money as well as all the, my clients as well. So, yeah, on the horizon, definitely. I think there's for my end of the scale, which is the low end of the scale in terms of development, there are um there are a lot of opportunities. There are um some really what I find interesting, probably underused portions of LEPs, code set, the exempt and complying code. It's just considering the cry for housing, and the cry for housing even at a bit of scale. So not just
Mm,
dual locks, but terraces and beyond.
yep,
There are opportunities in the code set that the government worked hard to put in there that are just going underutilized.
yep.
So yeah, I'd like to think that in time that I'll involve myself in some of them. But yeah, the
Well,
LEPs as well. There's some interesting things in them that you just don't see get used. And for example, and I know I'm going on a tangent, but um, the big thing you'll know, obviously yield, but minimum lot size all the time. When I was at council, everyone's planning report had a clause 4.6 variation, so they want to bring down that minimum lot size. Um, and if you can, in certain councils, if you can get a couple of lots together and do the built form, all of a sudden your minimum lot size has come down by 25%. That's a pretty good win. So you weren't going to
yeah.
get a 300 square lot. You were going to get a 360 or whatever, 375. And they just seem to go unused. Clauses
Mm,
like that. But that's uh, that's one of the things that I think I think could help. And it's probably just an education piece as well, for people that, you know, to look out for those things and utilize them. Um, Probably help
Indeed.
the community as well.
So back to that horizon, what's next for Chris Borg? What's on the horizon for you?
Oh, geez. Um, I'm building the team, building the cert team, and I play a couple of different roles with Barker Ryan Stewart. Again, because it's tying back to when I sort of came to Queensland, I was doing marketing, I was doing bidding. Uh, so all of a sudden, I ended up on the marketing team and the bidding team at BRS. Um, so I definitely enjoyed that. But moving forward, I've been lucky enough to become a shareholder in the company as well. So and I was invited to join the board a couple of years ago. So I've sat on the board for probably 3 or 4 years. Um, that part of it's really up my alley. I quite enjoy that. And as part of that, I'm get involved in the strategy for the company. Looking forward into strategic growth, so organic growth, mergers and acquisitions. So in amongst looking at plans and dialing into drains models to review them,
Mm.
I definitely like to, and hopefully the future holds more of that business strategy type thing because that's what I'm really enjoying at the moment, and I yeah, I think I see a bit of a future in that space for me, whether it be a business development type role or otherwise, but hopefully I can grow into something like that and bring the less experienced people up into fill the fill the projects that I'm currently doing.
Yeah, I love that. I think there is a natural transition into engineering leadership. All of those skills, your knowledge, the experience that you bring, into that boardroom, into that strategic role, into a business development role. I think that is a logical progression for some engineers. Some do want to stay technical and just do technical work, but I think there is that other side. And it's a testament to you how you've grown your career, the hard yards that you've gone through to get to that point. And I think a lot of people do want to get to that point in their career. And, I hope that out of this conversation that, I can definitely see that there's the stepping stones to be in that position to do that. So once again, Chris Borg, congratulations. And mate, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
No, it's been really nice talking to you, Darren, and connecting. It was like I said, it was a couple of months ago that was sort of first reached out, and it came off the back of me seeing what you were doing, and to being inspired. In the back of my mind, I've always thought that maybe there'll be some an education piece in my career path as well, and I felt like you're doing part of that. So yeah, I just maybe selfishly wanted to be part of it as well. So outside of just
Mate,
reaching out, it was yeah, it was a little bit of self-fulfillment as well.
oh, look, openly, there's nothing selfish about it. It's all part of educating, inspiring, and trying to get people to listen in. And for me, if someone takes something away from this conversation that pivots their career or gives them hope or inspires them to do something new or different, then openly, it's job well done. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think as well, like I'm sort of realizing, now that I'm getting into my or getting close to my 40s and whatnot, that you get to the end of your career and if you just sort of give it up, there's just a wealth of knowledge. Like you can imagine that the engineering fraternity is older, and you think about all that experience, knowledge that's going to be lost. Um, Places, or things like this podcast, LinkedIn, being involved in that sort of fraternity or community gives an opportunity for people to have those discussions and sort of extract that knowledge. And I've been lucky enough to just provide some comments on LinkedIn and whatnot, and then someone would reach out to me and be like, "Oh, hey, I saw your comment. It's kind of interesting. Did a bit of a dive. Saw your experience. I've been. I'm looking to do this. I want to be at this point in 5 years. How do you think I should get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it's flattering to be asked that question. And good on them too, because I think there's a saying that says something like, a smart person learns from their mistakes, but a smarter person learns from the mistakes of others. So, you know what I mean? If my career's zigged and zagged and got me to a point, and then I can help someone narrow that zigging and zagging and get to a point that they want to get to a bit sooner, then good for them, and I'll be happy and pleasure to be part of that ride for them as well. So yeah, LinkedIn and the podcast, and just having that network allows that to happen, and allows that transfer of knowledge, and it's vital, because there's whatever challenge or whatever problems keeping someone up at night, you could bet your bottom dollar someone solved it 10 times over. You just got to find that person.
Normally that's the case. No, I love it, mate. Thank you again. And yeah, can't wait to see what's next. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. Please like and subscribe. It helps us reach so many more aspiring engineering professionals and entrepreneurs. You can find us on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube.